Hello and welcome to the Gooners podcast. Always weird when I have to do that. It's normally Andy's job, but seeing as how Andy is cleaning his garage today and couldn't be ours to join us, then we've got three other lovely people here for this very unique show. Not really about Arsenal in the current day standpoint. It's more a look at the classic Arsenal teams and an experiment, a social experiment and an Arsenal experiment that we did. So let's see who's joining us today. First, we have from Arsenal America, one of my good friends that I see probably 4 or 5 times a year when we travel around, from Austin, Texas. He's one of the other participants in the draft, so we're not going to say which team, but he is breaking his full duck on the Gooners podcast. Welcome to Brandon Johnson.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for joining us. Brandon's going to help guide us. Brandon guides me into and through things sometimes, and so he's going to be guiding us through some of the team selections while I have all of my focus on trying to get the screen sharing to work, as we know that I've had problems with that in the past. So also today with us in the lower right-hand corner, if you're seeing what I'm seeing, he woke up at 7:30 p.m. today, as he normally does, starts his day with 8 hours of podcasting. This is a man who spends, just look at him. He spends every day inside by himself wanking, ordering food delivery, and watching YouTube. Tomorrow, he's going to turn on the news and find out that there's a coronavirus thing that's going around. So welcome to Danny, the GFP from the Bergkamp Wonderland. Thanks for joining us.
I haven't left the house for the last 34 days for no particular reason.
Yeah, coronavirus didn't even really start. The lockdown didn't start until 2 weeks ago, but you got a head start on that.
I know, it's madness. I'm loving it.
And before that time, it was like a year and a half, I think.
Well, the last time I only gave her a go out when Sean's back from uni, so she's there. She's abandoned me. All my friends are all grown up with kids and misses who don't let their husbands do what they want to do. You smell what I'm cooking?
I could smell it. Yep, that's someone's in the garage. And of course, you cannot do a show that involves judging things, like we're judging things, without the judge of judges himself. We're doing our best to brighten his isolation by forcing him to do even more unpaid work. It's Lee Judges. Welcome back to the pod. It's been a little while.
Thank you very much. Yes, I've had an extra week in isolation, as you well know, because I've done my back in, didn't I? So the week before all this happened, I've done my back in, so I've had to have a week off work, and of course all this has happened now, So
I can sympathize because I was going to say I'd never seen a person go from. I saw you about 3 days before your back went out. And your back was definitely not out then, but I've gone from 10 to 1 on the back scale pretty quickly. So I'm glad to see you're hopping around again. You sounded pretty good.
Unbelievable. I don't know if anybody's ever had it, but that sciatica nerve thing. Oh my God, the pain is unbearable. But I'm 3 days in now without any pills, so things are looking good. So.
I almost asked you to spell sciatica, but that's okay.
Well, that's bad enough saying it.
I know you got that good. I heard you foul up Aubameyang in an even better than normal way earlier.
I went Peter Van Hooydonk today. What the hell was I thinking?
Yeah, that was the best. We need to do, if we could just get a clip of all your Aubameyang pronunciation.
Yeah, unbelievable, unbelievable.
Well, so here's how this works. Brandon, you're going to help me if I explain anything wrong here, but over the last 2 weeks, Arsenal America, which, as most of you know, it's a massive supporters club. Like it or not, if you're over on the other side, whatever you think of Americans, this is a passionate supporters group, and we are thirsty and starving for Arsenal-related material. So about 20 plus members of Arsenal America who are all sheltered in place in various parts of the country. We drank our way through a draft. Someone had a baby in the middle of the draft. I'm not even kidding. At least one member.
He was back picking the next morning, though. So,
well, yeah, he had a baby. Then he went out to McDonald's to pick up burgers, and then he was back picking the next day. This is your expat living in Denver, by the way. And still managed to draft their Arsenal 11 teams over 10 days. So here's the rules, because we've seen a lot of Arsenal, discussion about, top 11 Premier League all the time, top 11 Arsenal all the time. This is not a simple contest where people pick their top 11 out of all the available players. This is 8 teams, similar to, fantasy NFL. Lee, you had a great year of experience playing fantasy. But, any kind of a fantasy league where you draft, you weren't invited back for year 2. Let's put it that way.
Surprise.
And So basically, from team 1 to team 8, and then back from team 8 to team 1, over and over again until we had a starting 11, 5 substitute players, a manager, a home pub, and a home and away kit. And really, it was up to the drafter as to what they felt the priority was. There is no criteria. They just have to have played one game for Arsenal or managed one game for Arsenal, and they were eligible. So again, you won't see top 11 teams. You'll see top 11 of whoever was available at the time that people drafted. So is that, Brandon, did I explain it well enough?
Yep. And like you said, it was a snake draft. So after the first round, then we started from the bottom. So the number 8 picker team would have 2 in a row, and then when it gets back to the top, the number 1 team would have 2 in a row, which made for some interesting situations I'll discuss.
Yeah. So congratulations, number 1 team. We're not going to say who picked what, but the number 1 pick was Bergkamp, and that person then didn't get another pick until pick 16. So you can kind of see how the strategy went. So we need you two, experienced and fine gentlemen, to give us your feedback, your criticisms, your praise, whatever you feel like talking about with regards to any of these players or these clubs. At the end of it, we'll ask you for your pick, and there is a link which I think I have posted in the I've posted it in the chat. I'll post it again, but there's a link where you can actually go and vote on that, and we want as many of you who are tuning in to do that. Speaking of tuning in, we got Ryan in the podcast who only cares about Danny. He didn't ask how Brandon's doing, how I'm doing, or how Lee's doing. Thank you very much. Actually, I lied. I missed this one. So thank you. We got Loki in here. We got Don One, Mickey Redman. I think I saw Wade King in here earlier. David Ziegler's watching instead of joining as he was invited to do. So thanks a lot for that. You can come in here if you want, David. But all right, so
yes, David, I do have a fax machine in my printer, so I'm not sure what you're seeing back there.
So thank you for joining. So let's see. We're going to go first with the team that was selected first, and this is where the professionalism shines through because I got to figure out how to get to the right thing here. Bear with me, and I hope that you'll be able to see this. If not, we'll kind of talk and walk you through it. But how did we do here? Okay. These are some tiles I created. Basically, we've got the starting 11 with the 5 subs on there, the home and away jersey, and the home pub. So, Brandon, you want to – this was the first overall team taken, but, again, they had picks 1, 16, 17, so on and so forth. So, you want to take us through the starting 11 here?
Sure thing. So, this is a manager is George Allison, of course. One thing I mentioned earlier, since this was a number 1 pick, they didn't have another pick until 16 and so on. Well, this is one of the teams that one thing we didn't explain is that we went from, I think, 12 Eastern to 8 Eastern every day. And we had 2 hours to make each pick.
And they fucking took every – well,
yes.
They or me, depending on, whether it was me.
Which means that if your turn became at 6:05, you could effectively shut it down for the day. Well, that's exactly what this team did. We got there, and someone right before them took their pick, and they just got pissed off and rage delayed. So we didn't see him again until 12 hours or 15 hours later. So, go ahead.
Who we got?
We got, of course, number 1 pick in the draft was Dennis Bergkamp. At forward, we got David Jack also at forward. Winger, we've got Mark Overmars. Central mid is their captain, Aaron Ramsey. Also at central mid, Alan Ball. Winger is Cliff Baskin. Left back is Sammy Nelson. Central defenders are Herbie Roberts and Per Mertesacker. Right back, Bakary Sanya, and goalkeeper John Lukic. On the bench.
Danny,
yeah,
Danny, first of all, how many of these players do you remember seeing or heard of? Because people had to stretch pretty far back, sometimes into the late 1800s to fill some of these slots.
So this is Team Allison at the moment. Allison, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to identify the teams by their coaches' names. So
yeah, I'm looking at it on the link that you gave because I can zoom in on that. Right, I saw John Lukic play Mertesacker, Sanya, who I called Sagna for the entire of his career, Ramsey, Overmars, Bergkamp. Yep. So that's a pretty decent team. I just put in the chat which ones I think are the 3 best teams. But yeah, that's a decent team.
Okay, and it was well picked. I have to say. Hold on, I got to get it back up on the screen here. Give me a
We're
second.
not get to know who's picked it then. To the end.
They do, but it's a secret.
Right, it's a secret for us. Right,
I think the only problem you got there is you've got no one. Alan Ball is okay, but he's no good for modern football because he's ginger. And Aaron Ramsey was spending the entire season injured
Because he's ginger. That's why.
Yeah, and I don't remember Herbie Roberts, so that's way. I didn't even know that was an Arsenal player. I know many from many years ago, but I know Bastin. Don't know why they put Bastin out wide there when Bastin should be playing that front. But do you insist that it's got to be a 4-4-2?
Yeah, there was really only we had to pick a formation, so there was some discussion, some liberal discussion about can you use them as a winger if they played there even once, then you could use them there. But again, everyone's got their own criteria. So if you've plopped a player in a position that the eye of the beholder doesn't think they should be in, and that hurts you, then so be it.
Alan Ball, World Cup winner for England, but in his Arsenal days, that's the other question. Are we picking them for the time they played for Arsenal? Because when Alan Ball came to Arsenal near the end of his career, he wasn't the Alan Ball that won the World Cup.
Yeah, there was lots of discussion about that too.
Yeah, there was lots of discussion because later in the draft you had certain people taken like who's a good example of that? Oh, Serge Gnabry. And again, we're trying to not have any rules other than how the teams were set up. So if you want to look at Serge Gnabry and say, well, he's a great player now. He played for Arsenal, so I'm giving full credit for that. Or if you want to look at it and say, how many games did he play for Arsenal and how good was he while he was here, and take away, that's up to you. So
although we had players like Alexi Lalas, we had him on trial during the summer of
they have to have played one game for the first team.
Okay, good. I'm on board now, right?
Yeah. So, Lee, any thoughts on this lineup?
First of all, I'm impressed with the 2 kits. Like the 2 kits, that was one of my favourite ones. The away kit there with it, because obviously that was the Invincible away kit. So that's always going to look good in my book. And the 70s Arsenal iconic shirt when I first started watching the Arsenal.
I think that might have been one of the first kits to go, if I remember correctly. Because whether you take a kit or whether you take a player for your bench or something like that, again, all part of the strategy. But because it was players first, then kits. You could have taken a kit first if you really wanted to.
I've always I think because when you was growing up as a kid, they were the yellow and blue 70s kit as well. Was always be the ones that I would pick in front of some of the good kits there. But like for the modern day one, the 2004 one is one of my favourites. Sammy Nelson, I see play as well at left back, very, very good left back. I've been watching, funny enough, some of the 70s games on YouTube, and Alan Ball was a decent player for Arsenal. Wasn't probably I agree with what Danny's saying. Probably wasn't as good as what they expected him to be, but was a decent enough player in there in midfield. And played alongside Liam Brady, so it was a good little partnership. And they started off badly, but they started getting better and better. But listen, a team that's got Dennis Bergkamp in there has got to be in with a chance of winning things. You know what I mean? So I think it's quite an impressive one. Not too sure about Mertesacker. Who's the other one at central? Could you put that? Who's the other central?
I'm actually frozen right now, so I've got
okay.
Right.
Also got Cliff Baston in there, who's the 3rd time all top Arsenal goal scorer. So him and Bergkamp up front, that's going to cause some problems. So that's a good side. I'm impressed with that side, to be honest. Ramsey, going to get goals from him. Alan Ball, he was a good goal scoring midfielder. So they've got and Overmars is in there as well, if I remember rightly.
Yep,
so
correct.
I'm liking that team.
All right, that's a good start, Brandon. If you can go through the subs on that one, I'm gonna try to unfreeze myself, which may drop me off for a second, but I'll be back.
Yeah, we got Frank Stapleton, Jack Wilshere, Viv Anderson, Jack Lambert, and Kim Kallstrom. How did he say that?
Did they pick that for a joke? That's what I was going to ask. Did they?
I think towards the end, some final subs may have been more about amusement than anything else. I mean, how most teams in those days played with 2 subs anyway.
I'm surprised Frank Stapleton's on the bench because he was a quality player. But
That's how many quality players have been playing for Arsenal. You can go through a starting 11 and end up with a Frank Stapleton on your bench. Also, if you only have 2 striker positions, so if you want a Frank Stapleton, you gotta grab him and then store him on your bench. So, I'm having some lovely technical difficulties here.
So we did talk about the shirts. So the 70-71 double winners and the home and 2003-4 Invincibles.
The pub was an interesting story.
Yeah, so the pub, Globe Pub is in Chicago, and I'm going to give one hint. This is not a Chicago team.
But there is a Chicago team in here that wasn't.
But there was a Chicago team, and I think that there was some tension in the room after that pick was taken.
Yeah, but I think that's the one pub that was taken that isn't over the pond. It's the one U.S. pub. I've been there for a handful of games. It's a great pub, but
it's the only one.
Gutsy choice.
Yep.
All right. So then the next team is a team with Herb Chapman as the coach, and I am again just having technical difficulties. So if you want to talk a little bit further about that lineup, I'll be right back.
Sure. You can guess what their first pick was with Thierry Henry up front, along with Nicholas Anelka. Winger, we've got Saka. Central, we have Paul Davis and Liam Brady with Alexis Sanchez on the other wing. Left back, we got Kenny Sansom with Steve Bould and Peter Simpson in the middle, and Pat Rice on the right. Goalkeeper is Pat Jennings.
Whoa. Is there any need to carry on? I've got to say that's an unbelievable team.
That's one of my 3 favourite ones. I haven't picked which one's going to be my favourite, but plus then you look at the kits, the home kit. That's got to be worth an extra point on its own, hasn't it? The Anfield '89 kit, I think that is.
Yeah, 89 home and the 2013 away.
The Aaron Ramsey scoring in the FA Cup final wore that, didn't he?
Yep. At least so.
The screen sharing is always a bitch on this thing, but I think this is the team that we're looking at next.
Yes.
Herbert Chapman as manager. And Brandon, have you taken us through the starting lineup or just the first couple picks?
Nope, we went through the whole lineup.
Okay.
Whole starting lineup.
Any comments on that one?
Well, I think you've got one of the best all-time left backs in there, Kenny Sampson. Pat Rice, legendary as well. Peter Simpson, I don't really remember him too well, but again, like what my dad says, was an outstanding defender. Boldy, we all know about. Liam Brady and Paul Davis. The only thing that I would say was probably a little bit unbalanced because they're both left footers. If I'd have to criticise that midfield. But then the 4 up top, well, Nicholas Anelka would have been an absolute legend for Arsenal if he'd have stayed longer because he was outstanding for us for a couple of years.
It was interesting. I will say during as we went along with the picks, there were teams that, you had to start deciding whether you were going to hold, their actions against them for the rest of their lives. We had Nasri, Anelka, Fabregas, so Adebayor decisions to make. Walcott didn't really harm the team as he left, but the snake factor was discussed widely as to whether that would impact people's decisions or not, or whether you would purely just look at their play. Robin van Persie, a great example of that. So it was interesting to see how those players go. I would say they generally went lower than you would think they would have gone if it was just purely on paper.
Also, got to say, Charlie Nicholas in there and the 12 pins where I drink. You know what I mean? I think it's ticking all the boxes. This one for me, boys, ticking all the boxes.
You talk about the snake factor. Pat Jennings, he was a Spurs player, came to Arsenal, and much like Petr Cech, as soon as he was done playing, he went back to the scum. So he's a bit of a snake. Great goalkeeper, though. Who else is a bit of a snake? Sanchez is a snake. Liam Brady, well, he went to Italy because at the time they had a limit of £500,000. That's the most any club could pay for a player in Italy. So he left us when he should have stayed, but that's just us being mean. Thierry Henry, ultimate snake for me, went to a team for money and glory, And do Barcelona give a shit about him now? They certainly don't. They don't give a damn. And he could have been, if he'd have spent he could have been a Tony Adams or Dennis Bergkamp, spending his entire career at Arsenal. We'd have been, but no, I'll never forgive him for that. And
still has a statue outside the stadium, which I know is a point of contention in a lot of different ways at the moment. But yeah, I mean, again, what I like about this is that there is no criteria. Everyone can apply their own criteria. You guys go over the bench?
Not yet. So one interesting thing to note is that people also went at their teams differently. Some people went for who's going to be voting on these. What kind of who's going to be popular with the people voting. Whereas others went strictly for some of the best players. So on the bench we've got Charlie Nicholas, Gio Van Bronckhorst, Danny Welbeck, Andy Linnigan, and Martin Hayes.
Whoops, a daisy, Martin Hayes.
Wow, scored some goals for us. I tell you what, it's a good
one season. Then we got a fortune for him from Celtic, and he never did the thing again. Brilliant.
I believe 90% of his goals were penalties as well that season.
Yeah, 24 goals. I think he got all competitions that season, roughly.
Yeah, they were. I mean, I remember seeing Martin Hayes play, and he was certainly not the flashiest part of the team that was on the pitch that year, but he was a mainstay in it. Back in 88, 89. Gio Van Bronckhorst, I think is he the longest, or is the longest name on the back of an Arsenal?
Yeah, he's done well. He was decent. He never really done it though for us, did he? To be honest, he was a decent player though.
Well, I would imagine. I would imagine why that's his general manager. That's why his general manager probably put him on the bench. But yeah, so we talked about the kits, 12 pins. I love the 12 pins. That's you can't go wrong with the 12 pins. But yeah, so that's team number 2. Anyone else have any comments on that before I try to share the third one?
The manager, great shout for the manager. Yeah, Dan, can't argue that there.
Very important. Most would argue one of the top 3 managers. I don't think you could say that he wasn't top 3 with George Graham and Wenger. Some would put him that he created modern Arsenal. And so, personally, I'd put him as probably our best manager. Then George Graham, then Arsene Wenger.
Speaking of George Graham, team number 3.
Controversial, that Dan. Controversial.
Team number 3 is the skipper is George Graham, and has one of my favorite player names on here. I can only imagine you can guess which one it is. But Brandon, do you want to take us through team number 3?
Yep. George Graham's the manager. We got forward. We got Ian Wright, and
third overall pick.
Forward Tony Woodcock. There was quite fun around that game. On the other wing, from the wing, we've got Podolski. In central, we got Ray Parler and Brian Talbot. On the other wing, we got Graham Ricks. And defense, we got Nacho Monreal, left back, Martin Keown, captain, and Percy Sands. And then on the right, we've got Peter Story with the Madman Jens Lehman in goal.
Well, and we got pub is the Ald Triangle. The kits seem to be the 90-92, the Almost Invincibles home, and then that'll be the long sleeve 89 or 88-89 JVC away. Someone has an affinity for the JVC years, it would appear, based on their management and their jersey choices. But Lee, any thoughts on? You're a big fan of Woodcock, right?
Tony Woodcock was a decent player, but I will have to say this probably his better days were at Notts Forest and when he was out in Germany. But he done come over and had a couple of decent years for us. I'll tell you what, one person on there that I don't, Graham Ricks doesn't get the credit that he deserved for us for a few years. Was a top player, and the one that I like, well, the 2 that I like at the back, obviously Martin Keown was fantastic for us, but Peter Story was a legendary player in the early 70s. Hard man, you wouldn't want to mess with him. Hard man. Yeah, wouldn't want to mess with him. Come from round this way. And, if it wasn't for him, Arsenal wouldn't have won the double because he had the penalty in the last kick of the game against Stoke, against Banksy in goal. Gordon Banks was a goalkeeper. Last kick of the game. If he scores it, we get a replay. Or if he misses it, we're out, and then that would have been the end of the double. But he put it in, and he was a top player. And my dad always goes on about him. What can you say? Ian Wright up front, magnificent. Brian Talbot and Ray Powell are very, very similar sort of players. So if I've got a little bit of a criticism, they're very, very good, working, underrated players for the teams that they played in. I always liked Brian Talbot, to be fair, but I feel that maybe a little bit of weakness with the fullbacks, because Peter Storey did play at right back for us on a few occasions, but was more, the central midfield hard man.
Midfielder, yeah. So he was a hard man, and Woodcock was probably a hard
brilliant.
Man.
Love the kits. two of the best kits.
He's not letting that go.
Nope.
No, yeah, I don't tend to overlook obvious double entendres very often. It's one of my weaknesses. But Danny, what are your thoughts? And we'll add in here before you comment. You don't have to comment on them, but we'll add in here the subs. Very offensive-minded subs. God forbid, anything happened to this defense. But Theo Walcott, slight drop-off from Ian Wright maybe. But Theo Walcott up front, Alex Lacazette. Speaking of snakes, Sammy Nasri made it in there to back up at one of the wings. Giles Grimandi and Alex Song. Again, not the first five people maybe one of them, but not the first five people you'd think as substitutes. But again, we're getting down to, at this point when substitutes were most commonly picked, we're talking about players 90 through 120 in Arsenal history, and the occasional joke thrown in like the Karlstrom thing. But Danny, what do you think?
I think this person was confused because they didn't want to play a 4-4-2. Lucas Podolski never played well at left side of midfield. He did for Germany, but in a different role when they didn't really play with a striker. Podolski should be playing up front. How you could pick Woodcock over Lacazette? Woodcock, like Judge was saying, he had a couple of really good, half decent seasons. Saved us when he come back over here from Cologne, and then went back to Cologne afterwards. Ray Parlour, in his best days, would be playing out wide right or right midfield, not right winger. And Brian Talbot, it always amazes me. That bloke was magnificent for England and for Ipswich, and he came to us, did really well for us. No one ever hears about him. Always amazes me, people like him and Malcolm McDonald, how they're not. I don't ever remember seeing him in the media. Sammy Nasri, he was a knob, but great little player. Giles Grimandi, more of a defensive player than a central midfield player, but he was, like I always say, the Grimandi player who can play in any position. Why did you want Alex Song in that team? He had one good game against Barcelona when he thought he was Pele, and that was about it. But I think this person really, if they'd have had their choices, would have probably played maybe Nasri behind the front two. But any team with Ian Wright, Martin Keown, Jens Lehmann, and you've really, and plus two magnificent kits, and probably my personal favourite ever manager. So they've got all the ingredients, but I think the person wanted to go, I didn't really want to play 4-4-2.
I think it's important to make a disclaimer right here, because I created these tiles, and one thing that the people who picked these players did not get to do, I just kind of tried to do it to the best of my ability, was decide for the two center midfielders which one would play on.
Right.
And they didn't, and same for the two center backs. Yeah. The wings kind of sometimes resolve themselves. If we had two left wingers, I had to slot one out on the right in the starting lineup, but they didn't pick that. I just put them in there. And as far as the substitutes are concerned, same thing. If there were substitute forward,
But there was two Ray Parlours, wasn't there? There was Ray Parlour as a young man, played on the right midfield, and Ray Parlour as he got older stayed in the middle and kicked people.
So again, the criteria should be whatever criteria you want, but if you're judging it based on Talbot being left-footed and put at the right mid, that's not the owner of the team that did that. That's me. Okay. So I will take.
Mike, could I just verify something? Could this person who picked this team had Alex Lacazette in front of Tony Woodcock, or was it was like a different pick or something like that? Because
we picked players to a starting lineup or to the bench, and in this situation, this person took Tony Woodcock
over Alexis, over
starters, and later took Lacazette as their third striker, and therefore on the bench.
He did score some good goals for us, Tony Woodcock. I have to say that.
Back in the time when Arsenal were really in the doldrums, he was a shining light.
Probably a good thinking about it. Not a bad call, you know what I mean. And George Graham would have got got a lot out of him. And the old triangle, I think's a iconic.
Just about to ask you if you'd ever been there.
I've never ever been in there. Never ever been in there. Always wanted to go in there. It just seems like it's a bit too busy, and like during the summer, I think it'd be a good pub to go to. But like during the winter,
what pub would be good for you that's close to this one? The Bald Triangle. It's close, but
it's close, but not close enough. You know what I mean?
Your mate David Ziegler says in the chat 4-3-3 would suit this group a little better. I think, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Yeah,
that's
and
fair.
so did Nicky Red. Oh no, he didn't. Come, sorry, I'll shut up.
All right. So we got and Loki is disqualifying any snakes. It looks like, or specifically this one. All right. So team number 4, we're getting close to being halfway through.
I'm looking at Brandon here, see because if his team's coming up here, because I don't want to start digging out his team, sort of So I'm trying. He's got a poker face. I'm not too sure if that was his team there or not. So I'm going to. I'll be looking at Brandon if his expression has changed.
Look, you don't have to worry about that at all. Just dig away. Team 4. Now,
Go ahead.
Team 4, highlighted by Birdie Me. Brandon, take it away.
Got John Radford and Robin Van Persie as forwards. The wing, we got Paul Merson with Patrick Vieira as captain and George Graham in the middle. One thing we did
as a player and a manager, as everyone was.
Yep. On the other wing, we got Freddie Lundberg, left back Nigel Winterburn, central defenders Frankie McClintock and Thomas Vermaelen, right back Lee Dixon, goalkeeper Jack Kelsey. And with the home shirt and away shirt, we got the 2019-20 home and the 95-96.
I mean, it's my team. I'm just saying that's what I'm wearing.
Yep. And then the 95-96 Blue Thunderbolt.
And the famous cock.
I believe was chosen strictly for its name.
Well, it's not a bad place to go, though, is it?
No. I was thinking back to the discussions around it.
Yeah, that was some stuff. Let's go to you first, Danny. This time, what are your recollections and what's your feeling about RVP leading the line? Where does your judgment fall when it comes to snakes, and whether in this particular context you're digging them out or you're recognizing their play?
Absolute scumbag. If he was on fire, I wouldn't wee on him. But as a player, that one season, any team here that has Van Persie in it, you're winning the league in his best season without a shadow of doubt. Then you look at the back, you're not conceding any goals with them lot. Dixon, Winterburn, Vermaelen was very underrated for us. He was there at Arsenal when Arsenal were at their worst under Wenger, and he paid the price for it. And Frank McClintock, oh my God, I didn't see him play, but he was another one of those players that you just did not mess with. And when you've got George Graham and Frank McClintock from the 70-71 double winning team, plus Paul Merson, Paul Merson was 3 different players. He was a striker as a kid, and then he played in the hole behind, and then he could. He's a winger as a kid, I think, wasn't he, Lee? Didn't he play out wide?
Started off as a winger, then was pushed up front when he first broke into the team, and then moved back there.
Brilliant player. So, I mean, you've got Merson. I think Merson and Lundberg should probably swap sides there. But yeah, with Vieira and George Graham, with those back 5, you're going to win every game 5-0. This team is absolutely magnificent. And plus, you've got our current home kit, which is beautiful. I'm not a fan of the Stefan away kit.
Mm.
Yeah, but the actual on the pitch, that's a very, very strong team. I mean, you could just put on front and you'd be fine.
Backups, we got Alan Sunderland from the 79 was it the 79 FA Cup?
Yeah.
Nicholas Bentner,
that's the Steph jokes.
Van Persie, Joe Holm, Flamini, and Gail Clichy as a left back substitute. So, Lee, what are you thinking about this start?
Well, first of all, the famous Cock, which is of course at Highbury, is a good pub to go into and have a beer. It's got some nice beers in there, got a nice few little booze in there, so it's a nice pub. I'm with Danny on this. Don't like the away kit. I'm whether it's me, and I always prefer yellow and blue if I'll be honest. But that like lightning thing for it was awful, and
that was a nice thing, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, but the Adidas home one this season, I think, is revamped after a few little iffy seasons under Puma. That's come back and that's vibrant. But listen, this team here, I think, I'm with Danny on that. This looks very, very strong. You've got Paul Merson and Freddie Lundberg, two of the best wide players that Arsenal have ever had. We've got skill, but more importantly, they could score goals from anywhere. You know,
are you looking at their faces, Lee, as you praise this team? See if either one of them are holding in a smirk. That's what I'm looking at.
We've been practicing.
I think this could well be Brandon's. I say because he's sort of pretending not to be interested in it, like, you know. So, but
we say nothing.
John Radford was one of the all-time best Arsenal strikers. Make no mistake of that. Right up there in the top 5 or 6 top goal scorers of Arsenal have ever had. One of the best number 9s. Alan Sunderland would be an excellent substitute to come on there, like, you know. And I have to agree with Robin van Persie. I think for 2 years he was sensational for Arsenal. I think absolutely sensational. Sad how it ended when he went to Man United, but I understand the reasons why he went. I never held it against him.
It was the little boy inside him, wasn't it? Which I think is the most disgusting, perverted thing. But I mean,
well,
I don't need to know what he does in his private time.
Forget about his private time. He turned around and said, "Look, what are you going to do? What players are you going to bring into this side to make us best?" And what the answers he got was not good enough, and so he decided to go. Unlike us fans, we have to stick by it. He has a choice, and
whatever you think of the Cesc Fabregas interview with Arsblog last week, whether it gave you more sympathy for him or whether it just solidified how you feel about him in a negative way, he's pretty much articulated the same exact things as RVP had.
Yeah, listen, in an ideal world, you don't want to see Robin van Persie go to Man United. I didn't want to see Frank Stapleton go to Man United back in the day, but they did, you know what I mean? And it always, Frank Stapleton was a fantastic player for Arsenal, but when he went to Man United, it does take it away from you that little bit, you know, the loyalty factor, as it does with Cesc Fabregas. But, it seems to be wavered a little bit with Jules Graham going to Tottenham, and also Thierry Henry going to Barcelona. You know, so I rather, like players are players. You know, they're going to go and whatever. Like, you know, for me, any team that's got Patrick Vieira in that, they're going to dominate midfield. And I consider that George Graham was a quality Rolls Royce of a player, if you know what I mean. So it's sort of like Robert Perez of his day. You know what I mean? Just glided through. The back four. I'd say that's a very, very good side. The only thing that I don't like about that, Bertie Mee, a double winner as well, is the away kit. That's all I can really criticise on that.
That's half the games, though. Half the games you're not going to watch because of that. So.
Yeah, well, you know.
Look, if all you're complaining about is the away kit, then they've done a good job.
Yeah, they've done a great job. That is it, like, you know,
or he or me or whoever it is. All right. Next on the list is a team that is managed by Don Howe, and I will be adding them. 17. Here we go. You might prefer this away kit, or perhaps you don't. But here is the Don Howe managed team with the 5th pick in the draft, which who was the 5th pick that they took? It was Tony Adams, of course.
Captain.
The first one I think that went immediately for defense, then how'd they fill out the rest of their team?
We've got Alan Smith forward, along with Ted Drake. On wing, we've got Rocky Rocastle with Fabregas and Edu in the middle, and Arshavin on the other wing. Eddie Hapgood at left back. In the middle, we got Tony Adams, their captain, and Rob Holdinho, with Hector Bellerin on the right back and Bernd Leno as the goalkeeper. With
big combo of current day and historical there. The back four. Well, no, I was half the back four current day and now half the back five is current day, but it's an interesting blend. Subs, Malcolm McDonald, as you mentioned earlier, Lee, I think. Kevin Campbell, Lee's best friend in the whole world. So we might get some second best friend to me. David Platt, who for me, I mean, he scored one of the best England goals I've ever seen. Lucas Torreira.
Cameroon, wasn't it?
What'd you say?
Overhead kick against Cameroon or Belgium, wasn't it?
It was Belgium in the round of 16 of the 90 World Cup. That was the 90 World Cup game that I saw in a pub over in London, and it was phenomenal because it was in the 118th minute, I think, as well. And David Luiz backing up Rob Holding. An interesting twist because Rob Holding doesn't seem to be able to supplant David Luiz in today's lineup, but he's listed here as the backup. So, Lee, thoughts on this lineup?
Well, I'm gonna say that Ted Drake. What I'd obviously never see him play, but you have a look at his record; it's unbelievable there. I know that Dan doesn't like Cesc Fabregas, but Cesc Fabregas and Edu in midfield. Edu, by the way, was probably the most underrated player ever to play for Arsenal, in my opinion. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I thought he was a fantastic player for us, vastly underrated. Cesc Fabregas, I believe, other than Liam Brady, was the best teenager that's ever played for Arsenal. I think he was that good.
Better than Zellman.
Say again?
Better than Gideon Zellman?
No.
I just want to clarify that you're going there. Okay, so
no. Cesc Fabregas was the way he left and all that disappointing. But I always felt with Cesc Fabregas that when we got him, he was always going to go back to Barcelona. I always resigned myself that he was always going to go back to Barcelona at some stage, whether it be whatever year it was. Disappointing that he never come back to us once it didn't work for Barcelona. And for the life of me, I don't know why we didn't do that, but that's another story. But he played.
If you listen to the interview, he sat and waited for a week for a phone call.
Yeah.
And this with him leaving, I don't see that his explanation really. I mean, it didn't really remove any of the tarnish or whatever off the situation. But the whole thing about coming back, the one thing that he said that made the most resonation to me is they could have called me within 3 hours to say that they weren't going to pick me up so that I could have gone and negotiated with other teams. Instead, they took the entire week that they had in the buyback clause, never got in contact with me, and we only started negotiating with United and Chelsea and other teams once the week was over. So, if Wenger really just made him sit for a week waiting for a phone call that never came, that's a bit of a dick move.
Yeah, well, listen, it was
not saying we needed to sign him back or we had to sign him back. I've always said if we did sign him back, we probably wouldn't have signed Alexis Sanchez because that there was money being allocated to one or the other, it seemed, that summer. But to let the whole week go by without the courtesy of telling him, I know we're getting off track here, but that was the bit that I took from that interview that was the most surprising. Yeah,
so a ridiculous decision, but I felt even watching him. The games that he played, he dragged Arsenal through. There was a poor side at times. You know what I mean? He's right what he said. He had Robin van Persie and him as the world class players, and probably Sammy Nasri at the time. And he's probably right. The rest of them weren't good enough to be there, But listen, they've got Tony Adams in that side. They managed to get the king in there, So I think that he's very, very worth a place here. It's a decent looking team. Iconic shirt, I've got to say that. That's got to pick up points for the shirt. And the Gunners pub is an iconic pub as well. So and I believe that's the 2003-2004 home shirt as well. So some good kits there to just make up for the lack of, because I don't think realistically, and I'll be honest, that any Arsenal defender currently playing in this team at the minute should get into any great side of Arsenal's.
Well, we've got 3 of them in here, including
to show how weak it is. So whoever done that, and Bert Leno didn't go as well. Ain't bad goalkeeper, I've got to say. But Donnell.
Would Bert Leno be in your top 8 goaltenders of all time for Arsenal? Because again, someone's got to have the 8th goalkeeper. Well, I'm not sure whether it was this team or not, but
I think Danny will back me up on this. We've been fortunate. We've had some long-term goalkeepers like David Seaman, and then which was there for a long time. Pat Jennings before him would definitely go before Bert Leno. But then I think that Lehmann definitely. But then after Lehmann, I think our goalkeepers have been an absolute downgrade.
Almunia.
onto the Arsenal.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, Leno, again, Leno.
It'd be about 4 or 5.
First choice for goaltenders, but maybe they prioritized in other ways. And I don't know that I'd say Leno isn't one of the top 8. He's certainly wasn't one of the first 4 taken, but
yeah, about 4 or 5. I think that's about right on that. But to have Rob Holding and Hector Bellerin in there, our defending has been embarrassing over the last 3 or 4 years. So none of them would get in here. And David Luiz on the bench. Well, I hope that ain't you, Brendan, that's picked that team. That's all I'm saying.
It might have been me. Why are you not apologizing to me?
Well, I don't think you're that silly, mate. There you go. Right,
Danny, did you comment on this one yet?
No. Do you want me to?
I would love for you to.
Smudger Smith. I was lucky enough to do a podcast with him because you hosted it, and that was really good. You've got a team. You're playing with my heartstrings here. Tony Adams, my favourite player. Rocastle, absolute legend. I can picture in my mind Smith, Rocastle, and Adams all wearing the bruised banana back in the day, watching them at Highbury.
Good point.
Louise. I think maybe that might have been a typing error. Leno, I would have him in my top 5 Arsenal goalkeepers since I've been alive. I really rate him. Having Edu in midfield, like you're saying, Judge, he's very underrated, but he was magnificent. If it wasn't for the fact that we had Vieira, although he's slightly more attacking than Vieira, but Vieira was really good. And Gilberto, he was mixed up in that, and it was unlucky when he went to Valencia, broke his leg as soon as he got there. But David Platt, magnificent player for Arsenal. You go back and look he was an England star when we signed him, at the same time as roughly about as Bergkamp. But it's I think. Yeah, with Ted Drake up there, you can't really think about how that player. I mean, you got Drake, Smith, and McDonald, all goal machines. Big Kev, another player who scored really a decent number of goals for. He wasn't the main striker. He played with Sam with Righty, and so all the light was always going to be on Righty when he was playing. But you look at when Campbell was at Arsenal, he was getting 20 goals a season, 2 or 3 seasons in a row. So it's a good team, but I think. It's one of the 3 best teams you've got here, but I don't think it beats some of the other ones. But pulling at my heart, I mean, Andre Arshvin, one of my favourite players, and I love Cesc Lee. I've never had a problem with Cesc. And you, in that interview, we're not here to talk about that, but in that interview, a lot of things have come up in that interview that he politely said, like Wenger wasn't in charge of a lot of the things, but he took the blame for a lot of things. And yeah, if anybody hasn't heard that, go to Arseblog, listen to that podcast, because Cesc is brilliant and he's really open. And I hope one day Wenger does the same thing. But I would say this is the 3rd best team here.
And nothing against Arseblog for getting, an almost Arsenal legend, Cesc Fabregas, but
he's no Lee Dixon.
If you want to listen to an Arsenal legend on a podcast, you can come check out our YouTube page and or iTunes and listen to us interview Lee Dixon last week.
But you showed yourself up, didn't you?
How so?
Giving out his wrong appearances. You know what I mean? How bad was that? Get a legend on there and knock a game off of him.
Yeah, I won him back though. I dazzled him with the rest of my knowledge.
Wow,
which means Wikipedia got everything correct.
And which you don't usually do, like you're not doing now. I told Sean about this. I went, he drank a bottle of champagne. She went, one of the little ones. I said, no, a full bottle of champagne. He necked the entire thing during the show he was on with us. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I clean up well when we have a guest of honor on.
Lee's magnificent, though. Not just you, Lee. Anyway, everyone you've had on called Lee in the last week has been brilliant.
Yeah, well, the only person that we would have on that's named Lee that would not be magnificent is not coming on the podcast anytime soon.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, I to take a quick break though and just say, I mean, the reason we do this podcast is it sure as hell ain't for money. But it is for just the opportunity to talk to people like Lee Dixon and Alan. I mean, it's just it's
incredible, isn't it? It's incredible.
Andy and I just looked at each other after we ended the podcast, and for like the 5th time in our podcasting career, we just looked at ourselves and said, "Did that just happen?" Because it's a dream of mine. I mean, these guys. We've now had 3 players who played on the iconic, one of which wasn't really fully ready yet in Kev. In 88, 89, but who played on that team that I grew up with. And we've had lovely conversations, 1 or 2 or 3 with them. So believe me, that's reward enough for me. Those guys are amazing. So, and they all pretty much 2 of 1, including Lee Dixon, who's pledged to help us with the charity over the summer. And that's,
I didn't know you hijacked him.
couldn't ask anything. Actually, I was shocked. I wasn't going to bring that up. Andy hijacked.
By the way, Lee Dixon, you will be so helping out with our charity thing, but he
got him with the cycling thing because he knows Lee how much Lee's into cycling and Andy's into cycling as well. So he got he got some serious some sympathy or whatever from him there. So back to the draft. We've got 3 more teams to go. The team with the 6th overall pick, who ended up with, again, the managers weren't picked in order, but the 6th overall pick, skippered by Tom Whitaker. And why don't we go through this one, Brandon?
So we got Aubameyang, and then forwards. We got Aubameyang and Da Silva as forwards. Robert Perez and Alex James coming up next with the winger and central mid, and then Santi also in the middle. Jordy Armstrong on the other wing with left back Ashley Cole. Middle central defenders, we got Gallas and Kolo Toure. Right back Lauren. Goalkeeper Szczesny with the 92-94 home and the 0102 gold Sega.
And the Bank of Friendship on Blackstock Road as the pub. Quick shout out to Jill Armstrong at Touch of Powder. I told her that her dad was getting another mention on a podcast that no one watches tonight, and so here we are. Lee, let's go to you first on this one.
Got a lot to share.
And I actually ran out of space on this to add the whole Aubameyang name, so you may feel free to just call him Abba and
just call him Pierre.
Pierre.
I like the away shirt because obviously we won the league at Old Trafford with that one there, so very iconic. The Bank of Friendship, very nice pub, very elegant pub there.
Beautiful courtyard in the back as well. And
it's not like where you can go. You're not allowed to go in there and singing and chanting like, and you've got to be more. It's more for the mild mannered Arsenal fan. This pub, so you wouldn't be allowed to get in there, Mike. So
I've been in there, and so at the last time I was in there, I was having some fights with Claude. As a matter of fact, so
so there you go.
So some surprising people are let in there on non-game days.
It's where Danny said it's something that pulls at your heartstrings. It pulls you a little bit there with certainly Aubameyang. Jordy Armstrong, as you mentioned, Jill there, she would be pleased that her dad's in there. Robert Perez, well, what a player he was, you know what I mean? One of the best. Santi Cazorla, one of my favourite Emirates players. And Eduardo up front, well, if it weren't for injury, I think we would have won the league that year, and what player he would have been. So you're pulling on the old heartstrings here, but you've got Ashley Cole and William Gallas in there. Hold on a minute.
So that's the downside for you is that Cashley and Gallas are in there?
Well, look, listen, Ashley Cole was one of the best left backs ever played for Arsenal, let's be honest. I didn't like it that he left for Chelsea, but again, the reasons are there and everybody knows about it. William Gallas was, listen, for a player for him to come in and take the number 10 shirt, you know what I mean? That just summed up Arsenal.
Was that his demand, or because that was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen?
For Arsene Wenger to even allow that, just to me, just shows that we was going down a downward spiral. You might think that I'm being silly because it's a number, but I think
it's a statement.
It is a statement, and to give it to a central defender, I think was when I thought it was insulting.
Who held it right before him? I'm trying to remember who.
I don't know, some decent player.
Left the 10 open for Gallas. That's a good trivia question. If anyone in the chat can think like who wore the 10 jersey right before Gallas did, but your number 10 and your captain just sitting on the ground whining is not what you really want to see.
Add that back four. Tyler Corey was a good one. Lauren was decent. Szczesny never really, to me, fulfilled his potential, if I'll be honest. But as I say, like the front 3 or 4, or 5 of them there. And Alex James, by the way, was a top player, calling by statistics and things like that. So that top half pulls at the old heartstrings. Definitely the kits do, but the other bits don't do it for me, if I'll be honest.
All right. Thanks to Wade for his comment. Wade, despite your awful hockey jersey in the picture there, Lee thank you for listening to the podcast. Lee did say Aubameyang would be the only current player he would be on the bench that could play in the Invincibles. He's on the bench, and you could tell by looking at him, he was only saying that as a result of having to pick one. But it is crazy to think how good we used to be, unfortunately.
Yeah.
As subs, we have Silvino in left back. We have Beast Baptista, not a tremendous amount of games for us, but I think left an impression. Oxlade-Chamberlain playing in midfield. I will say that was my, again, whether this was my team or not, Chamberlain playing in midfield was my doing, not necessarily where the owner of this team picked him. Serge Gnabry at right wing, Ray Kennedy as a backup forward. One of the few teams not to have two backup forwards, I believe, just because there's so many goal-scoring legends that you could pick on Arsenal that's a pretty stacked position. So, Danny, you have I'm 3 Coronas in, and I'm already forgetting who said what. Danny, have your heartstrings been pulled out yet?
Well, you've got 4 Invincibles in there: Perez, Cole, Toure, and Lauren, which is really good. Like I agree with the judge. Cathola's good, but like the Gallas thing, you have got if anything goes wrong, you're in trouble because Gallas will have a little cry and Aubameyang will refuse to play. But Gallas, it really annoyed me because thinking back at the time, he was for Chelsea, he was a centre back, left back. And the number 3 shirt was available at Arsenal, which is left back, and the number 12, which is a backup, which used to be Andy Linnigan's number, that backup centre back. So he could have had either of those, and he was spiteful, just didn't like him. Then he went on to play for the Scum. But you've got another clown in goal, Chesney. During his Arsenal career, he was a clown. As much as he's a brilliant goalkeeper now, back then he was an idiot. Geordie Armstrong. If you go to Amazon and type in Geordie Armstrong on the wing, I think Dave Seeger wrote that. Magnificent book, superb pictures in there. Really is a wonderful thing. Alex James, you look back at him, the amount of goals that he scored, wonderful player. Like Ashley Cole, the best left back in the Premier League history for any team, I would say. If you're going to want goals, they played for England at nearly 100, maybe it was 100 times. So many great players in there. Everyone loves Colo, but don't forget he turned his back on us to go and play for Man City. They showed him the money. I mean, Arsenal let him go, but he could have refused to go. But that's another whole story. I'm sure Alex James was a striker. Eduardo, like you were saying, if he wouldn't have got injured, we would have won the league that season. Not only because we missed him, but the effect it had on all the other players. And you got Bobby Perez in there, giving it Vavavoom down the wing. So many great players, but I just don't think the entire thing works. You got too many arseholes in there.
If this is true,
and that away shirt is rubbish.
David knows his stuff.
Yeah, it is true. Burkamp left, and the next person to take it over was Gallas.
Yeah.
All right, so David, you're now David again. Whenever he does a good thing, he becomes David. Whenever he forces us to eat pineapple on pizza, he becomes David again. David Ziegler. Why would they do that, man? I mean, I guess you want the reason to leave it empty for a couple of years is as a tribute to Bergkamp and to really save it for someone special, and then you go and give it to fucking Gallas.
Right, it was an insult. Honestly, it was an insult when they done it. You know what I mean?
No, he had the other 2 shirt numbers free.
Yeah,
with those 2 free, and I suppose injury could have been part of it, but Van Persie was on the team at the time. Fabregas was on the team at the time. Well, Fabregas was fine with 4, I suppose, but why would you? I don't know. I don't want to relitigate that. All right, so that's Tom Whitaker's team. Brandon, anything else on that one that you want to add?
Nope.
No, we had some comments that needed to be made, and I don't mean to trample on you with those, but. Whitaker was the 6th team in the draft. So we got 2 more to go. With the 7th overall pick, and as soon as I look at which team it was, I'll remember who the 7th pick was. This is the Arsene Wenger team. And I will say Arsene Wenger was not picked with the 7th pick, but he was the first manager picked, I believe. And here we go.
All right, so this is Arsene Wenger team. Forward, we've got Charlie George and Canu. On the wing, with Perry Gross. Midfielder, Michael Thomas and Manuel Petit. Winger Pepe, left back Bob McNabb.
Wait, I got to see your faces when that was announced. Okay.
Central defender Koscielny and Terry Neal, right back Abue, and goalkeeper. I think this was actually their first pick.
Yeah, I think it was. No, Pepe was. No, no, it was David Seaman.
With the jerseys being the shirts being the 05-06 Red Currant, and the Purple Rain with the Arsenal Supporters Clubhouse as the pub.
Yeah, it's the one pub that doesn't have the name on the front of it. But if you've walked past it on Gillespie Road, if you've ever been in there, it's a magnificent place to grab a nice cheap beer, to sometimes meet Arsenal legends. If you don't like Yanks, you probably shouldn't go in there. If you don't like Yanks or Hungarians, you probably shouldn't go in there. But otherwise, it's a brilliant place. Just a very, very short walk from the Arsenal tube station. But yeah, that's the Arsenal Supporters Clubhouse. So, Danny, what are your thoughts on this tile here, this compilation with Vela, Limpar, Arteta, Kolasinac, and Petr Cech on the bench?
And I believe Kolasinac was drafted as a bodyguard, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he was there to pretty much protect the team.
Well, you lose a point for the away kit. You lose a point for the home kit because Arsenal never played in that colour. Someone had recolorised the black and white photo, so he never wore red currant or black currant, whatever it's called. You got Seaman in goal, our best ever goalkeeper. Abue on the right. I mean, that's just done for shits and giggles. Koscielny, things much like with Fabregas, we'll see in years to come. The reason why Koscielny left the club because he was shit on by the people who run the club, but that hasn't come out yet. But one day it will. Bob McNabb, a bit before my time, wasn't he part of the 70-71 double team?
Yep, he was.
Yeah. Manu Petit, the best Arsenal song. He's French, he's quick, his name's a porno, Flick Emmanuel, my favourite Arsenal chant, along with Bergkamp. Mickey Thomas, when you're putting Mickey Thomas and Perry Groves in that team and you're making me weep, but Limpar should start ahead of Perry Groves, both of which I've done podcasts with. And if you can get Perry Groves, my God, the man is an Arsenal encyclopedia without looking anything up. He's genius. Pepe is a bit of a mess. Carnu, just all on legs, and Carnu from the corner flag, magnificent. Charlie George, to this day, everyone loves him. Does tours around the Emirates. Do they do tours around Highbury? I'm not sure. Probably not.
I do tours around Highbury when I come over and I stay there. So right, Lee?
Yeah, I saw you did a show from there. Charlie George, always going to be one of every Arsenal fan's favourite players. Another one whose career went a bit tits up. Not really his own fault, just bad luck. This team isn't really going to do much. You got some absolute stars in there. Our best goalkeeper, Mickey Thomas, that goal at Anfield. But then again, he left us to go to Liverpool, which for me tarnished him. But that's a mishmash of half decent players and players playing out of position. But yeah, some fond memories there. But you got Abue at right back. No.
You've got. I'm surprised that he doesn't have a substitute, because the substitute then would substitute for him after he'd been substituted.
Yeah, it might be a young person who picked this because you've got Pepe in the team as well. I think this would be a bit like me playing this game. After about 5 or 6 players, I'd lose the will to live and just pick whoever was available.
Well, the not only Charlie George leading tours around the Emirates, Perry Groves does so as well. And I had the pleasure of walking through one of his tours a couple of weeks ago before I got evacuated by medical helicopter back to the States. But Perry, man, you got to hand it to these guys. They're not under the club's thumb. Perry, Lee Dixon when he does the tours, Charlie George. Well, Charlie George maybe a little bit less, but they'll tell you, they'll go off on record on things that you wouldn't think the club would like them doing during their stadium tours. So it's an interesting time. But Perry was a class gentleman. I actually asked him to sign a kit for one of the charity things, the one thing that we hadn't fulfilled yet, because we had a misunderstanding with Ray Parler signing a kit. And he waited for me after the tour while I went to the shop, to the Armory, bought the kit, brought it out to the parking lot, or whatever you guys call that, and signed a shirt. So class individual, really good stories. Lee, what do you got to say about the kits, the pub, and the starting seven?
The kits are awful. Kits are awful. You know, the blackcurrant one was just for us to make money on. You know what I mean? So everybody would buy one because it was the last season at Highbury. So that's what they jumped on that. that what the hell the other one is, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? So obviously,
in that, looking unhappy.
just it's just not good. Like the Arsenal Supporters Club is an iconic place. It's been there for years. It's never changed. It's the same as what it was when he was back in the day. So I think for nostalgia, that's fantastic. I'll give it on there. Listen, I've met Perry Groves on a few occasions. Perry's a fan, as you said, Mike, is one of the nicest guys you ever wish to meet. Pleasure meeting him, but Anders Limpar would go in front of him, and I can tell you what Perry would say that he would do as well. You know, so Mickey Thomas, you know, for a couple of seasons he was fantastic. Started off at right back for us. I think like I'd prefer to have him at right back instead of Emmanuel Bowie, if I'll be honest. You know, start off with petite quality. Pepe, unfulfilled. Kanu, I thought was a great squad player, one to come on, and he was just like, you know, some of his goals were fantastic. But and Charlie George, you know, was an iconic player, you know. So and Terry Neal, because Terry Neal was manager of Arsenal when I first started watching the Arsenal. Really, he was the first manager I remember, and I always asked my dad, you know, what was Terry Neal like, and he said class centre half. One of the best centre halves about. So he would do a very, very good job in there. My God, he'd have to with Babui and Koscielny next to him. I tell you, like, you know, and Bob McNabb quality.
I recall Neil went pretty late in the draft, and you know, you had a lot of people who had already taken two center backs, and Neil was a great value pick.
Yeah, terrific. You know, one of the best. I'm telling you that now. One of the best. So he's up there. But for me, it's it's not going to win a league, that team, even with Seaman in goal. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and you know, this is the interesting thing. We've seen Saka in a starting lineup. We've seen Pepe, Rob Holding. I mean, you know, again, does your criteria provide you with the the desire to say what kind of player they could be, or just judge them on what's happened so far? And again, that's why we didn't put any ground rules in this. So. Brandon, any other comments on this club?
Nope, I'm out of my drink, but that's about it.
Well, you can go get
Perry
another
Groves
one.
was underrated, by the way.
We got one more thing. Sorry, what'd you say?
Perry Groves was underrated. Done a very good job for Arsenal. Very, very good job.
Positions, and so unlucky with injuries when he went to Southampton.
Yeah. Is this true?
Read his book. His book is one of the best Arsenal books you can buy. Fantastic, so honest all the way through. Lovely bloke.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm pretty much forcing my son, now that he's home from school for months on end. I'm forcing him to read every Arsenal book, the '89 book, Smudge's book. We're just going through them one by one. But we got one more team. Speaking of one by one, we have one more team to go through, and the team is helmed by Pat Rice. And let's see, we got this. All right, so I was able to bring them all up.
One interesting.
Brandon, you're without drink, but can you still do this? I mean,
yeah,
you'll
I'll try.
you'll be able to pull through.
So one interesting thing about this is the person they drafted in the fourth round, they immediately put on the bench. So that's just a little background.
You'll know who that is shortly.
Yeah, you'll figure that out pretty quickly. So we got Giroud and Wilford.
Wiltord.
And as forwards. On the wing, we got Reyes, and middle, we got Rosicky and Silva with Wilf Copping on the other wing. Left back, we got Wally Barnes with Sol Campbell and David O'Leary in the middle, and George Mayo on the right with Bob Wilson in goal. And
I want to say their first overall pick, because they were in that 8th position, was O'Leary, and then I think they came back with Campbell. They went with defenders in the top 2 picks. And you could hardly argue with those two, given that Adams was already taken.
The shirts are the 2000-2002 Dreamcast and the 1950 FA Cup final with the World's End, which is appropriate in these days.
That's true. We'll start with Lee on this one.
Loving the shirt. I'm loving the shirt. You know, the 1950. Was it 1950 FA Cup final one? Was it?
Yeah, that was the one that was commemorative to your birth.
that is quality. That is. Listen, that central defensive partnership is probably the best of all of them. If I like Sol Campbell and David O'Leary as a partnership, that's you ain't going to get past them too much, to be honest. But it gets worse as it goes forward, I'm afraid. You know what I mean? So, you know, Jose Antonio Rey as well. You know, sadly not with us no more. But what a fantastic footballer he would have been for us if he would have settled in from England. He just didn't settle in England, did he? From Spain, you know. But wonderful, gifted footballer. You know, I always when I think about him, I always think when the tragic game in 2005 at Old Trafford, Gary Neville assaulted him about 8 times. You know what I mean? Like, and got away with it. And unbelievably, they just butchered him that day. Like, you know, and they should be ashamed of themselves for doing what they did to him that day. Quality player. Giroud, I think. Much underrated, if I'll be honest, very much so. A bit like Wiltord, really. I think like important players in their respective teams. Rosicky, another one won it for Arsenal. That if it weren't for injuries, when he played, some of his performances were magnificent. But he wasn't
he's one of the players, along with Santi Cazorla, who, I mean, yes, they were brilliant when they were healthy, and they could have been wonderful, and they were just lovable. Just idealistic type of players. I find it crazy and interesting how much love they get, like in the historical landscape from people when they really had such a very short period of healthy time for the club. I mean, Diaby's a whole nother story.
Yeah, just tragic, isn't it?
But I mean, Rosicky, I love the guy, but how many games did he play that he was healthy? And Cazorla. Probably a little bit more because his injuries weren't constant. It was just suddenly over. But I always love that about this discussion and this debate is, the people could say Santi Cazorla was one of our greatest midfielders ever if they saw him play his whole career. But there's so many people behind them to look at and to pick. Didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I just, the Rosicky thing.
No. I just think, it's so bad at how many players, when you think back, had those sort of injuries, and Thomas was one of them. I thought he was going to be a really, really good player for us, but I think he had about a year out, if I remember rightly, with an injury or something like.
It was 2 years with a calf injury. It was
there you go. So it was as long as that. So it just shows you, the list is,
his injury was basically as long and as debilitating as Cazorla's was.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could pick a team. You could pick probably a really legendary Arsenal team that's been out for over a year, and put it down on it would be an outstanding team. Because it would be, fantastic. You'd have Ramsey in there. You'd have you pick a central defenders. What's gone on in a minute with Chambers and Holding, and Rosicky would definitely be in with that. Those lot, it's a tragic, really, but not a bad side. But I don't think enough.
And it's only it's only players that have been playing since about 2005. I mean, these things never. We talked to Lee about this. I'm like, Lee, you had a 22-year career, 14 years at Arsenal. You played almost every single game. Like, did you just play through ACLs, or is there something different now about the way that? Because these injuries, these year and a half long injuries. You didn't see a lot of them back in the 70s or the 80s. I'll tell you that. I don't really understand that, but I think people get healthier with time, not more injuries.
It's a lot to do with the pitches, if I'll be honest. You know what I mean? But because I'll tell you what, if you go back and look at when Lee Dixon was playing in those years, the tackles that were flying in there are nothing like they are now, and we seem to pick up.
That's what boggles my mind about it.
Yeah,
the non-contact injuries are the ones that are hurting people now, but there was a lot of non-contact back in the 80s and 90s as well. So I've put the link for voting into the chat. It's going to be open for a week. Please, vote if you can. We want to see who's going to be the winner of this, and at least it'll spark some good debate. Danny, your thoughts on this lineup?
Interesting fact here: Sylvain Wiltord won the league with Bordeaux. Came to Arsenal, won the league twice in 4 seasons, left, went to Lyon and won the league 3 years in a row. He's not really a striker. He had 1 season with Bordeaux before he won the league there. He had a 27-goal season. I'm just looking here. I remember him at Arsenal thinking he played out wide right a lot, scored a couple in that goal against Man United. But the most league goals he scored a season was 10. He had an 8, a 10, a 10, and a 3. He's not a striker. And Giroud, 16-game run, cost of the league against Leicester. Those are two people you do not want up front to try and score your goals. I don't really know much about Barnes, Mail, and Copping, but you've got Bob Wilson, the nicest man in football. You've got Silva, Campbell, and O'Leary. So you're not really concede many, but you're not really going to score many. Rosicky is going to go out injured. Reyes, if you have an early summer, you might get 2 or 3 good months out of him. 2 months at the end of one season and then August of the next season, because he is not a cold weather player. He's a magnificent player on his day, but he was homesick. And like you were saying, Lee, for Neville to come out and admit they targeted him, kick the shit out of him through that game, the FA should look at that and go, do something. You can't do stuff retrospectively, but so out of order. And then I don't like that away kit. The home kit was the last kit I ever bought. Pat Rice, never a really great manager, magnificent assistant manager, wonderful right back for Arsenal, servant his entire career until he left to go to Watford for a season, then came back to us. But now that team's going nowhere really because you're not scoring goals.
Brandon, your comments on specifically on Giroud, because I have a comment about Giroud, but I want to hear your feedback first. Which one of you was it that said or it was you, Danny? That my memory's already gone. You're not going to score many goals, but Giroud was kind of a facilitator, though, of sorts, much more so than a typical forward was. Brandon, what do you think? Giroud make it for you or not? Whether this is your team or not, I don't know, but well, I do.
I know that there was lots of discussions about Giroud. I mean, I think one of the things about him is he a fan vote, or is he or is he really your starting forward? I think I've always loved him, the way he plays. I would have been interested to see him on the bench though, coming in as a super sub.
Yeah, I don't know about him being one of your top 2 subs there, or top 2 starters there, but I've always said, and I'm a big fan of Giroud. I'm not a big fan of how he's acted since he left, but what are you going to do about that? I'm not a big fan of singing someone's song when they come on the pitch as a substitute for a rival club. But as far as when he was at Arsenal, I mean, look, he had his weaknesses, but if you think Aaron Ramsey was a legend of the club, then Giroud's a legend of the club. Those two are tied together so tightly as far as I'm concerned, because the reasons that people point to for Ramsey being a legend at the club, which are the 2 FA Cup goals, maybe some other things that he did as well, but both of those wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Giroud, nor would the Jack Wilshere wonder goal against Norwich, nor would the Thomas Rosicky wonder goal against whoever it was, West Brom maybe, I don't remember. But when you look at so many of these classic team goals, Giroud is either scoring them, the scorpion kick against Chelsea, or he's made just a sublime assist on them. And I think he was one of the most underestimated strikers for Arsenal, I think, that we've had in the last, since Henry left.
I mean, a goal every 2.5 Premier League games, not good enough. I like him as a person, though.
But that's goal scored, though. That doesn't. He was more than anybody else playing with his back to the goal. He facilitated.
He changed his game to do that, didn't he? He was used to playing as a 2 up front.
I'd be more interested in seeing the goals plus assists per game and comparing that to people, because maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it's just that the assists he had were so so special at times. But I just think he was a far better player than people gave him credit for.
He won the World Cup without scoring a goal. So that's more than we've ever done.
So, any other comments on team number 8? So here's the deal: we've got a website which I've put in the comments. It's a Survey Monkey, so it's not done on Twitter. It's not a Twitter poll, but you can go to the link. There's a description of the rules. There's 8 teams you can vote for, and then if you scroll down, you'll actually be able to see these little thumbprints of those 8 teams and review them yourself before you vote. We'd love as many people as we can to vote so that we can get a wide range of different inputs. And at the end, the winner. Brendan? What does the winner win?
I don't know if that is. We've decided that. Just
I think it's nothing. I think it's bragging rights, which is always a good prize to have after spending and devoting 2 weeks of your life to this. But Danny and Lee, your comments, your presence, your knowledge about the historical players is exactly why we had you on the podcast. I appreciate you chipping in with that.
Yeah,
No problem,
guys.
How's you guys spending your isolation time? Doing anything abnormal? I mean, I know this is just run of the mill for you, Danny, but Lee, other than podcasting constantly, what are you up to?
Well, I've done the gardening. That's like looking the best it's ever looked at this time of year. I can tell you, So I've just been watching a bit of the old football. So Netflix has been a blessing at the moment, So I've got through the first one. I don't know if I can do 5-6 weeks of this. Is what they're saying it could be. Obviously got no job at the moment, no money. So no job, no money, and no football. So it's tough at the moment, you know what I mean. But
call me anytime you need support. I'll be there for you.
Thank you very much. But it's a difficult. It's like shopping now is a completely new thing. Queuing up round the corner and 2 meters away from everybody is an experience. If no one's done that yet, it's just an unbelievable time, isn't it? Really, but I'm trying to make best of it as best I can. And I'll tell you what I'm going to say now, these podcasts and that do help, don't they? They do take a bit of time off you. And
take a little bit of time off you.
You know what I mean? Like off your well, because otherwise I think you would go
rob you of your freedom and your days.
Well, I mean, it's just something to do, isn't it? You know what I mean? I think it's something different to do, So it is fantastic that even things like this, there are so many things you can talk about. Even when the games are not on, it's amazing, really.
This is where I'm finding my, I was getting a little bit jaded actually of talking about games in and out of every week. I mean, Andy and I started pretty much stretching a weekly podcast into a, twice a month podcast and
biannual.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of it had to do with work, which for me was at its absolute height, November, December, January. But it also had to do with a lot of just repetitious bullshit. And I've kind of found a second wind now because during the break we've got some interesting guests that we can finally get on, and we can spend more time talking to them than we can talking about Arsenal. And
are you in lockdown at the moment? I know it's different states, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Your state, they're not all in lockdown, are they? Taking the individual, all 50 states and making up their own mind, aren't they?
Some are in complete lockdown. Some are in kind of somewhat lockdown. Brandon, one of the things I wanted to bring up, I know that in Arsenal America, every city, and there are probably 150 to 200 cities, has a home pub. And right now, those home pubs are hurting because they're virtually all closed.
Yep.
Some of them may still be delivering food if they're that kind of restaurant. But I've seen in the last week, not Kickstarters, GoFundMes and other fundraisers just to kind of help out the pub universe because, for us, without having the ability to walk or train to the Emirates and be part of it week in, week out, tens of thousands of us do that here in the States and go to our local pubs, and they're kind of the meeting places and the hosts, and they decorate their pubs, they change their hours, they do all kinds of crazy things for us, at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning to watch Arsenal, and they're hurting right now. So
I'm just wondering how many are going to make it through.
Yeah, it's going to be real sad on the other side of this if a lot of those, the individual pubs that are generally not super profitable, but done from the heart, have to close down. So I would hate to see that over in London. I'd hate to see that in the States for sure, because that is really the gathering points for Goonerdom here in the States. So if you live in a city where your pub is closed, search for, we can't provide links for all of them, but search for that and support them because they need the help right now. This wasn't their decision to shut down, believe me. Next show, Wednesday night, we're going to do another fun one. We're going to play a brand new Arsenal debut game called the Arsenal Player Close-Up Game. We'll give some more clues closer to the game, but you won't want to miss it. Currently scheduled for Wednesday, about 7 o'clock UK time. We'll have Sophie on if she's available. James McNicholas, aka Gunner Blog, will be joining us. It should be some fun, and again, it's just a way of kind of having some light entertainment that keeps us all busy. So if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and when we broadcast, we're also on the Facebook channel right now. Lee, anything to promote? Your great podcast, Same Old Arsenal, is doing twice a week now.
Yeah, we're doing that twice a week now, Mondays and Thursdays. So doing that, doing a little bit on the Guns and Yellow Ribbons as well, like, which is a good one. Of course, and anytime you want me on with you guys, I'm willing and able, like, So
yeah, let's give a shout out to Dan, Trev, and Fergus for Guns and Yellow Ribbons. It's good. It's good content, good discussions. It tends to be a unique approach, and there's this podcast world is saturated. We understand that, but every once in a while, there's one that catches your eye, and those guys do a really good job. Danny, speaking of the podcast world,
the podcast king.
The only reason we're still a podcast, Lee, you have Danny to blame for me, because we might have quit after about 15 or 20 things where no one was watching, except this guy picked us up and mentioned us on our podcast, on his podcast, and all of a sudden we had enough views.
Listen, Danny's very, very supportive to all of them. You know what I mean? It's a pleasure to know. So
he is the podfather in more ways than. I love Andrew.
He could be a different animal, but he's not.
I love Andrew. I love the podcast. So this is no slam on Andrew at all. But as far as and Andrew was actually very generous with his time and appearing on podcasts left and right as well. So you can't really say one versus the other. But Danny is just about podcasts being able to be alive and thrive, and has never been territorial about his whatsoever. So he's kind of like a swinger when it comes to podcasts. Watch.
And then you lot take it and do like Lee and Dan and Graham and Craig and you and Andy and all the others that just do magnificent stuff. And Harry, I love Harry's stuff. And Harry is the one, he needs 10,000 followers. The amount of work, I mean, we all wing it, but the amount of work Harry puts into every episode, and Tom. And
I was about to say you got to put Tom in that category as well. Tom Canty.
We should say thanks to the likes of YouTube and iTunes and Acast, Spotify. All these people provide this platform for us and don't charge a penny. And you can even have the option to turn adverts off. We turned all the adverts off on ours because we got fed up making nearly £1 a show. But aren't you going to ask us our top 3 teams from this?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I am. So, having been through, I'm such a great.
That's why I turned up.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, to finish us off, we need you guys to just to give us your top 3 teams. All right, the corona's getting to me a little bit, and I don't know.
Done this. How would you have been on it right away?
Yes, well, Harry's a much more professional. He has a better mic. He's got a better studio.
Good looking.
He's better looking. I'm punching, but he's probably punching too.
If you're loaded, you can afford to punch up.
Well, hey,
I mean, not punch up. That's the wrong saying, isn't it? Punching above your weight, yeah. And you've got quite a lot of weight. You've done well.
All right, starting with you then. Of the teams, now I've sent them to you separately, so I shouldn't need to bring them all up on the thing. But of the 8 teams, what are you thinking is your third, second, and first overall team?
In 3-2-1 or 1-2-3?
3. Let's go 3-2-1.
Third place is going to be. Actually, I better check this. Yeah, good job. I checked it. I got it the wrong way around. Third place is Howe, Don Howe.
Okay.
Lovely man, my Phil Collins doppelganger. Second place is going to be. It's going to be Bertie Me. Van Persie doing all the hard work there. But for me, a mile ahead. You can't have Henry, Anelka, Sanchez, Brady, and then have Sansom, Rice, and Jennings at the back, along with Boldy, Uncle Boldy. Those goals against Sampdoria should get in that alone. But yeah, a clear winner for me, Chapman, because Henry and Anelka and Sanchez are going to get you 100 goals a season between the 3 of them by a mile.
Very good. Thank you for your strong proponents of those 3 teams.
I haven't been bribed to say that at all.
What'd you say?
Been bribed to say any of those.
Hope not. I don't know who would do such a thing. Lee.
Well, the one that I'm going to go for to win it because and the only thing that I could criticise was the shirt, and that's the only thing that I could criticise was Bertie Mead's one. Was that one you went for, Dan?
I put them second. It's so close, but
yeah, I think that one first, and then for me the second one would be, which I haven't got here for some unknown reason, coming up on my thing. Hold on a minute. Would be the one with Liam Brady in it. Thierry Henry. Yeah, I think that
between those
going to
two,
go down as my second. That is, and that's a great team like that. But I think,
and Chad, if I know that it's a little bit harder because you don't have them all in front of you unless you've clicked on the vote link. But let's hear it from the chat. We got Loki weighing in, but
I think it's Bertie Me one had Vieira in it as well, didn't it?
Yeah, that was the one you were waxing poetic about.
Yeah. That's the one for me. Like,
yeah,
in
the middle.
Thierry Henry was the 12 pins. That was my number 2. Difficult. The third one's very, very difficult.
Pick the one with a blue just because that person was obviously desperate.
Yeah, looking a bit desperate like that, mate. So I think I'm going to have to go for. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Like very, very difficult.
They're all very good.
Yeah, I'll probably my third one would probably be because of Eduardo and Pierre. I think he said it again there. Aubameyang, Robert Perez in it as well would probably be my third.
And which one was that again?
That would be Tom Whitaker.
Okay, perfect. All right. And Brandon, I'd ask you your picks, but you were part of the draft, so you can't. You're not eligible. I'm not eligible.
Nope.
So
I very much enjoyed this whole process. It was fun. A fun 2 weeks.
Thanks to Nick. Was it Nick Lellenberg that?
Yeah,
Nick Lellenberg. Shout out to Nick. He's not a huge fan of podcasts, but I am a huge fan of this process. He apparently did this about 15 years ago before Arsenal America even existed, and was really kind of proponenting. He was proponenting us do this, and it couldn't have turned out better. It was both socially and Arsenally fantastic. So shout out to Nick and to everyone else who participated. Voting is open. It's open until next Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. UK, and we'll announce the winner in some sort of format. And gentlemen, I appreciate your feedback. And look forward to seeing you more often during this strange time of that we're all in. So thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Lee. Thank you, Danny. And that's about it. Come on, you Gooners.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.